This program is brought to you by Emory University.
I feel very happy today for multiple reasons. The first is that I'm now in one of the most prominent learning institutions, Emory, addressing to a very distinguished audience. Second, I'm also in a state which is, I think, one of the most powerful states in this country, Georgia. And I'm in the middle of that state, in the capital of this state, as at least with all its power, Atlanta. And then I'm lucky because I've been hosted, treated, and introduced by two elegant ladies. And that was a real exceptional moment for me. And I'm so lucky to serve in a country which is the land of big thinking. In this country, the people are taught, raised and grown up to know how to think big. It is very important. And I think all of you are so much lucky to be the citizens of this country. And most of you, I think, the young generation who are studying in this wonderful institution also are much more luckier in many senses. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm delighted to be here with you today. It is a distinct pleasure for me to address this gathering. As the Emory University and Halle Institute are leading examples of America's search for excellence in sciences, it is always refreshing to be in an academic setting. I am impressed and gratified by the strong interest of the audience to this event. In this regard, I thank Halle for her kind words and the opportunity to speak here. And I thank Mona for representing us in the best possible way. He's been our angel here. I think she has a magical stick. When she touches something, it happens. So thank you very much, Mona. Following the First World War, ladies and gentlemen, two key questions preoccupied the growing field of international relations as a discipline of social sciences. These were, firstly, who are the main actors in international relations? Secondly, what are the major drives of foreign policy? After almost a century, these are still valid questions. In trying to make sense of the nature of international politics, I believe recent Turkish history offers a good case. From this perspective, today I would like to talk about seemingly new interest and influence of Turkey in its surrounding region. This will also give me a chance to offer a perspective on the salient features of our current Turkish foreign policy. Recent academic or journalistic commentaries about Turkey's recent foreign policy make two common observations. First, and it was made by Halle just a while ago, almost an hour ago, it is claimed Turkey has given up its decades-old disinterest in the so-called East. Secondly, it is argued that Turkey now has a much stronger influence in its region and beyond. I would somewhat disagree with the first argument and also try to bring a different interpretation of the second. Indeed, a close study of our history suggests that Turkey, in fact, never been disengaged from the East or its immediate neighborhood. On the contrary, Turkish foreign policy has strived consistently to promote peace and stability in its region. From the Sadabad Pact of 1937 to Turkey's membership in the Organization of Islamic Conference, the history of Turkish diplomacy includes many examples of Turkey's cooperation with its eastern neighbors. Turkey was among the first countries to recognize the newly emerging states in the Middle East, including Israel and the Palestinian state established in exile. It was the first to open embassies in Central Asian republics in the early 1990s. For decades, we have been intimately involved in all efforts to solve various problems in the Balkans and Caucasus. I obviously do not have time to go into details. It is sufficient to say that even 30 years ago, diplomats working at the Middle East, Balkans, and Caucasus desks of the Turkish Foreign Ministry rarely had time to see much of their children as they grew up. And this is true for me. I haven't seen my children too much. They have grown up now, and I really very much want the clock reversed, but it never happens. I obviously do not, and of course, what has changed and what gives the impression of Turkey's rising role is in fact the increase in Turkey's real-time and effective ability to influence the developments and processes in these regions. In other words, while some factors warrant our involvement in peaceful solution or prevention of conflicts, some others enable Turkey to bring its soft power to bear. There are a number of reasons for rise of Turkey's posture to influence developments in its vicinity. First of all, when assessing Turkey's policies, one has to bear in mind that we live in one of the most turbulent areas of the world. Most of the potential and actual threats against the Western world's security emanate from our neighborhood. As such, whatever happens around us has a direct and usually immediate bearing on Turkey's political, economic, and social well-being. Our recent history is fraught with the adverse impacts of crises and instability in our region. Therefore, we cannot be idle bystanders as latent conflicts escalate to manifest ones. Let me briefly go over the situation around our country, which affects our foreign policy. Recent developments in the Arab world raise both hopes and question marks about the future. In the East, the Iranian nuclear issue remains unresolved. In the South, stability has yet to be established in Iraq. Efforts to resolve the Arab-Israeli conflict have yet to produce a just and lasting outcome. In the Northeast, the Caucasus continues to be a source of tension. In the Northwest, reconciliation efforts in Bosnia face serious challenges. And in Cyprus, the isolation of the Turkish Cypriots continues despite attempts to achieve a fair and viable settlement. In this age of global interaction, Turkey finds itself as a frontline state that feels the first ripples that radiate from troubled spots and can touch people even in more distant lands. That proximity has an enormous influence on our need to pursue policies to ensure stability, peace, and prosperity in our region. The second main factor that shapes our active involvements with our neighboring regions is the growing Turkish economy. Turkey is the 16th largest economy in the world and the 6th largest in Europe. The Turkish economy has expanded at an average rate of 5% over the last 7 years. It has the highest economic growth rate among OECD countries. On a global basis, it is second only to China. Turkey attracted some 20 billion in foreign direct investment annually over the last 10 years. Turkey is the sole OECD member that did not have to intervene in the financial sector during the global economic downturn. Knock on the wood, our credit rating actually increased by 2 points during the crisis. This economic dynamism only adds to our soft power. At the same time, it has to be supported by foreign policy tools, of course. New markets and new investments require more attention to the interests of our business community. In short, just like our American and European friends, now Turkey too has to support and protect its growing business interests with active diplomacy. The third feature that enables Turkey to pursue a more active foreign policy is its unique ability to understand, empathize, and communicate with different worldviews. Turkey has always been defined as a bridge between the East and the West. This analogy had two implications. On one hand, it depicted Turkey's unique position, both geographically and historically. On the other hand, it described the way Turkey was perceived, a generally reactive and sometimes passive player. I believe an accurate terminology about today's Turkey would not be a bridge between civilizations, a notion that implies passivity, but rather a center of awareness of difference. Turkey, with the ability to draw on different cultural and historical experiences of the East and the West, has the capability to understand and empathize with both worlds. As a secular democracy with predominantly Muslim population, as a free market economy, as the only country that has a unique history which politically, economically, and culturally shaded both Europe and Middle East, Turkey can and does incorporate and embrace many different identities in different worlds. As such, the question of whether Turkey belongs to Western or Eastern civilization is in reality not a meaningful one. The truth is that Turkey cannot be pigeonholed into any exclusive identity. It has a complex character that embodies many inclusive identities that overlap and enrich the whole. As a result of this, in today's world, Turkey has an enhanced capability to communicate with different views through its complex identity and rare competence. At the same time, the ability to understand languages of different worlds enables Turkey to make meaningful effort to resolve conflicts. This is how and why we were able to mediate between Israel and Syria. This is why Turkey can and does talk to every group in Lebanon, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in Kosovo, in Afghanistan, in Iraq and Syria. Ladies and gentlemen, with the fall of Berlin Wall, democracy and pluralism found their rightful place in global society. In recent years, Turkey's domestic reforms, supported by its EU accession process, have enabled it to achieve high levels of democracy for Turkish people. Obviously, this is a dynamic process. There can be no perfect state of democracy, and every society must chart its own course. And like wine, democracies require aging. The older, the better. While our democratic experience dates back at least 200 years, there is much room for progress. Turkey will continue to work to raise its democracy to the higher standards, thereby meeting the expectations of all its citizens. The continuous strengthening of the Turkish democracy has, as a very welcome byproduct, increased the credibility of Turkey's messages in the foreign policy arena. Thus, as the fourth factor, speaking the language of democracy and promoting pluralism helped Turkey to reinforce its reach and influence in the international arena. One recent illustration of this is the development that have been called Arab Spring or Arab transition. Probably a better word. What we have been witnessing in Arab world reconfirm the fundamental importance of meeting the aspirations of the people and the right to equally participate in the shaping of their own future. These developments are also monumentally significant in the evolution of international politics. The demands of the people in Cairo's Tahrir Square were not merely related to the future of Egypt. The Egyptian youth were sending a message to the Arab world and beyond that will no longer remain silent while a select few fill their pockets and marginalize a nation that once was a great major civilization of its time. In this context, what happens in the Arab world will echo not only in the Middle East, but will in time impact the global marketplace of ideas in an irreversible way. The recent events have also once again raised the age-old question of whether Islam and democracy can be reconciled. As Turkish citizens, we are proud to be a secular democracy among 57 nations with predominantly Muslim population. However, we no longer want to be exception. All nations, we believe, deserve free and fair elections. We see human rights, the rule of law, good governance, gender equality, and liberal market economies as universal notions that underpin stability, peace, and prosperity around the world. Let me open a parenthesis here on the recent developments in the Middle East. No doubt, the recent upheaval in the Arab world has raised hopes across the globe. This is self-evident in the Islamic world. However, this process has also raised many valid questions about what the future holds. We are certainly encouraged by the fact that dignity and the will of the people prevailed in Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia. But we also hope that the transition toward a participatory secular democratic system will be smooth and peaceful, catering to the needs and demands of all people, not just the majority. Turkey's vision of our region has been consistent for years. We have always stressed the importance of democratic principles, respect for fundamental rights and freedoms, the rule of law, good governance, transparency, and accountability. This vision includes the strengthening of the democratic rights and freedoms in the Middle East and beyond. This is by no means driven by self-interest or desire to expand our domain of influence. Our main guiding principle has always been the attainment of universal values for all. That's why, although the first tide of events in the Arab world caught many by surprise, Turkey did not hesitate to deliver a clear message at an early stage. Prime Minister Erdogan was the first leader who called upon the former leader of Egypt to meet the demands of the people or step down. As the transition ensued, Prime Minister Erdogan was to tell all Egyptians in Cairo that the principle of secularism was central to a functioning democracy. Our message to the Syrian government was no different. We stressed that violence against civilians was unacceptable. We emphasized the need for equality, freedom, justice, and democracy, and called on the Syrian regime to embark on a genuine national political dialogue open to all segments of the society. We made it clear that to postpone, delay, or worse, to ignore the will of the people would lead to a dead end. Prime Minister Erdogan and Foreign Minister Davutoglu did not hesitate to give frank and sometimes bitter messages to Syrian leadership. We continue to stand by legitimate demands and aspirations of the Syrian people. We have always acted in good faith in our policies towards our neighbor. However, we do not want to see bloodshed, tears, and oppression in our neighborhood. We cannot condone or ignore the use of force against civilians, the loss of life, and suffering of innocents. That is why we will continue to urge the Syrian regime to take the right decisions. As always, along with its American and European allies, Turkey will continue to uphold democracy. Dear guests, let me also add a few words about the recent developments between Turkey and Israel. Turkish and Jewish relations have for long been a story of friendship and mutual trust. We are proud that Turkish lands have always been a safe haven for our Jewish friends whenever they were in need, from their expulsion from Spain during the Inquisition to the Holocaust. Turkey was the second country to recognize the State of Israel after the United States of America, and the first Muslim majority nation to do so. As the only democracies of the region and two allies of the United States of America, Turkey and Israel have enjoyed cooperation on many fields, from security to trade. As a personal note, ladies and gentlemen, I spent 3 wonderful years of my life as a Turkish ambassador in Tel Aviv. I developed friendships with Israelis from every walk of life. On the New Year's Eve, phone calls I received from Israel outnumbered those from Turkey. The current government of Israel, however, at least as we see it, poses a risk to the time-tested relationship between Turkey and Israel. Let me brief you on the unfolding events that brought us here. The aid convoy to Gaza, organized in May 2010, was a humanitarian initiative with people from 34 countries, including United States and Israel. The convoy was neither sponsored nor endorsed by the Turkish government. It was a non-governmental endeavor. Despite high level of communication between Turkey and the U.S. and Israel regarding this convoy, and the America's calls for restraint and common sense to Israel, Israeli commandos boarded the ships 72 nautical miles off the coast of Israel in international waters. As a result of this military attack on a civilian convoy, 9 people needlessly lost their lives. These civilians were unarmed. 8 of the 9 killed were Turkish citizens, and one was a 19-year-old American citizen. The protection of its citizens is a fundamental duty of a modern state. Turkey, as such, asks for a formal apology and appropriate compensation for the families of those killed. We consider these steps as a way to mend relations in accordance with the applicable rules of international practice. We have shown every bit of patience and pursued every conceivable avenue to allow the normalization of our relations since May 2010. A number of secret meetings were held with Israeli authorities. Unfortunately, until now, simple and few demands of Turkey have not been met by the government of Israel. In this context, our government has decided to take some measures at this stage, including downgrading the level of diplomatic relations and suspending all military agreements. Turkey continues to leave open the door to reconciliation. Moreover, none of the measures we have taken target the Israeli people, with whom we continue to have fraternal relations. Our problem is with the current Israeli government. Ultimately, our discussions going forward must be based fundamentally on a simple premise. Having normalized relations will only be possible if Israeli government accepts responsibility for its actions and makes policy decisions accordingly. If Israel values its relations with Turkey, it will take these steps, and then relations can be normalized. Anyone who cares for Israel's security and well-being should encourage Israeli leadership to do what's necessary to normalize this relationship with Turkey. This is more important than ever in the light of the developments taking place in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize that the measures we have adopted and we will adopt are linked only to the current government of Israel's attitude. Our aim is not to harm or jeopardize the historic Turkish-Jewish friendship. On the contrary, we aim to encourage the government of Israel to correct its mistake and does not befit this exceptional relationship. Dear friends, over the last 20 years, our world has undergone a major transformation. Despite the significant strides we have taken in our quest to build a safer and more prosperous world, we are still confronted with serious challenges and that target our well-being and values. The perils before us are of a different and more complex nature. Therefore, we can no longer tackle the challenges as we have in the past. We need new tools and revised approach. In conclusion, I encourage you to take the long view in your examinations of Turkish foreign policy. I also encourage you to observe the flow of history, not a moment of it. As in the past, Turkey's alliance with the West will stand strong against the new challenges and testing times. Yet, our relations will also demand constant attention and creative thinking. Thank you. Well, I'm ready to answer your questions. I should have warned you, by the way, before I start, because I served as the spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry for 3.5 years. Therefore, I like talking. Sometimes I make it too long. Yes, please.
Mr. Ambassador, welcome to Atlanta. I hope you'll come often.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to you both as an American and as a Zionist.
Yeah.
This current administration in Israel, this current government that you're talking about having difficulties with, is capable of making an agreement with the Palestinians. It is governing from the right. Netanyahu is a very strong leader, and he can bring the Israeli public with him. Now, what happened is regrettable, and I personally apologize to you. However, I implore you to be sure that this does not escalate any further than it has already in terms of deterioration of relations, because it's getting increasingly dangerous, and things can spin out of control beyond anyone's ability to put the genie back in the bottle. So I know that your quarrel is with the government and not with the people of Israel and not with world Jewry. But the stakes are getting higher now. And Turkey, as the successor to the Ottoman Empire, helping to establish the Jewish homeland and having excellent relations with the Palestinians, is in a unique position to help broker a deal. And I speak to you as someone who has studied this for over 60 years, that the time is now to make a settlement, especially with the emerging tensions with Iran and their nuclear program and the chance of preemptive war. I think things are more dangerous than the tragedy of the flotilla. Thank you very much.
Why, thank you very much. I cannot agree more. I think what you have said is exactly the truth. Today, we need this relationship more than ever. It should come back to its own course as early as possible. It is in the benefit of not only the two countries, but to the region. The absence of this relationship, in the absence of this relationship, there cannot be a sustainable stability and peace in that region. You can rest assured by this fact. Unfortunately, this relationship is so important as the sole two democracies, let's say, of that entire region. It is so important to the United States as well, not only to the countries, to the region. So I believe that's why we have tried for 15 months since then, 9 months of which was spent for so-called discreet talks. Unfortunately, there is no discretion in Israeli, let's say, practice. Nothing is discreet. Although we termed it discreet, and I was, to a certain extent, part of those discussions as well, due to my experience in that relationship in Israel, and due to my familiarity with the leadership of the country. We tried hard. That was the only reason. And if the door is open today, that's the reason. All what you have said, I think, cannot be challenged. A single word of it. But let me tell you one other thing. In 1994, we don't know how or why they cannot come to terms in saying an apology. We know the dignity of a nation. We know the dignity of the people. The wording for an apology was a very well-crafted, a very well, I think, worded phrase. So it only required some big thinking. It only required vision. It only required leadership. You're talking about Netanyahu. I know him personally. So, with all due respect, we haven't seen the necessary or required or expected leadership from him. In 1994, ladies and gentlemen, same thing happened with the United States. A Turkish frigate called Muavenet was fired by an American frigate named USS Saratoga. Maybe some of you would remember, 1994, accidentally by a missile during an exercise, NATO exercise in the Aegean. 10 of our officers were killed. 10. What happened? The United States administration at the time, and I was serving here, you know, by coincidence at the time, since this is the land of big thinking, they thought big. And they took the required step. They apologized and paid the compensation. That's how it goes among friends. Don't forget, enemies never apologize. Only friends do apologize.
Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned gender equality, and I may be the only one, but there may be others in the room also who are very interested in your opinion as to the possibility of increased gender equality in the Middle East. Is the Arab Spring suggesting anything favorable in that direction?
Thank you for that question. Actually, at this stage, Arab Spring promises nothing to no one. Nothing pleasant, nothing, you know, accepted or expected. Unfortunately, this is the case. And ladies and gentlemen, the magnitude of the challenge is so big that we sometimes, when you yourselves, you know, thinking from 10,000 kilometers away, 10,000 kilometers away. What is the adjacent state here? Tell me. And what is the closest state here? South Carolina. So just imagine South Carolina being your neighbor as Syria. Just imagine you have 950 kilometer border with Syria. First. 400 something kilometer border with Iraq. 300 something kilometer border with Iran. And some 100 kilometers, several hundred kilometer border with the entire Caucasus. Would you be so happily listening to me today? That's the neighborhood where we are. You can, ladies and gentlemen, I'll challenge you. You can just go clockwise, counterclockwise, vertical, horizontal, whichever way you like. You'll see such problems as Balkans. You know, Balkans are burning. I mean, they have some urgent issues. You know, they're trying to cover their problems on the economic level. So they have big challenges. So you don't feel it. But we feel it. We have Russia on the top, swinging, you know, like a real challenge. And we have Ukraine, we have Caucasus, entire Caucasus. It's like a powder keg. We have Iran, we have Iraq, we have Syria, we have entire Middle East. We have Lebanon. We have Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We have the Gulf states. We have Afghanistan. We have Pakistan. We have energy security as a problem. We have the terrorism, fight against terrorism. We lose so many innocent lives to terrorism. So when you make your minds or make your judgments on a certain issue from 10,000 kilometers away, it's so different. It's so different. Canada on the north, Mexico on the south, and two oceans. How nice. You know. Please take a moment and put yourself into the shoes of Turkey. So Turkey, in this region, which none of you would like to be in, is faring well, I think. It's a stable country. Look, stable. It's a democratic country. It's a secular country. It has a free market economy. Booming. We have had 7 point something % growth rate in the last couple of years, and an average of 5 point something % growth rate in the last 10 years. One sick man of Europe, now the healthiest man of Europe. I challenge you. And now today, Turkey is the source of stability, both political and economic, in that region that I'm talking to you. So don't ever, please, take it for granted. There is no magical formula in our hands, no magical sticks like Mona has. No shortcuts, no nothing for dealing with this Arab Spring, unfortunately. We have a long way to go. We are right at the beginning. But you can pray every day when you go into bed to God that you're 10,000 kilometers away. Not like us, adjacent to those all those problems. Yes, yes, please.
You mentioned the heightened democracy in Turkey. Turkey has, it looks like at long last, gotten a hold on a problem that's plagued the country from its beginning. I'm talking about military control of the government and supremacy of the civilian government over the military. It looks like Turkey, along with maybe Indonesia, has conquered that problem, and that civilian control is at long last, at least in sight, if not completely accomplished. First of all, do you agree with that assessment? Second of all, what lessons have you learned from that would enable you to give advice to a couple of countries, at least, not your immediate neighbors, but in your neighborhood, in particular Egypt and Pakistan, which are dealing with that same problem and have done so not nearly so well as Turkey has?
Well, we are responsible from ourselves. We have no authority to make some suggestions to nobody. But we are doing everything for our own people, for the people of Turkey, Turkish people, because they deserve a better life, a perfect democracy, a perfect economy. It's been 88 years, sir, that we have been striving to reach and grab all those values that we try to cherish and aspire for. Like 3 T's, I call it: trust, transparency, tax, accountability, professionalism, rule of law. You can just go on and on. Such values. That's why I'm telling that in response to that gentleman's question, you can change everything on the papers. It's very easy. I mean, you can change the laws. You can change the rules. You can change your costume. You can change everything. But you cannot change one thing. It requires time and effort. That's mentality. It takes time. Now, democracy, for instance, is not like an instant coffee. Just you take a cup, put some democracy, stir it, drink it, and become Democrat. There is no such way. So certain things require a culture of it as an infrastructure that doesn't exist in that entire region, except Turkey. Turkey is still imperfect. we still try to reform ourselves. We have done enormous reforms, enormous things. And I believe I wouldn't be agreeing to you when you say that Turkey still hasn't completed this whole thing. I mean, you should just please try to look into the recent, especially history of our reforms. You'll see, really, we have covered a lot of ground in that regard. So, if we inspire some other societies, some other countries, it's good for them. But we will not stop. We'll just continue the reforms. That's why, with all due respect to our European friends, and I'll try to be diplomatic. But we're not trying to be just we're just running after EU not to be a full member. That's not the only reason. We are after the values. Once we institute all those values, the membership comes next. And that's, I think, why I said this country is the land of big thinking, as opposed to that geography of the globe, because in order to understand what Turkey is up to, you need to think big, which unfortunately we cannot see it in Europe today. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. My question is again about the Turkish-Israeli relations issue. I agree with you that the Flotilla incident was a regrettable incident, and I share the sense with you that this issue hopefully would be resolved sometime soon. But I'd like to play devil's advocate and ask you, what do you say to all those voices in Israel that say, well, okay, maybe we should apologize to Turkey, but it wouldn't really help because the current Turkish government doesn't really like Israel. And then some people would quote Foreign Minister Davutoğlu's book from 2001, Strategic Derinlik, in which he said, well, maybe it was a mistake for us to recognize Israel early on because Israel was founded as a state, as a compensation that the European powers arranged for the Jews for whatever happened to them in Europe during the Holocaust, and the Middle Eastern people are paying for the mistakes that Europe had done. This he says in his book. And so some people would say, wait a minute, with such an approach, maybe if we apologize now, in 2 or 3 months down the road, something else would happen, and the relations would again not be as they should be. So why would we even get into this apology or compensation? Again, I've heard these voices, and I'm just curious to know what would you think about them.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's a very pertinent question. I know of your feelings. I feel them because I lived in that society too long. I mean, it says 2007 to 2009, but it's actually almost 3 years I lived in that country, and I really spent very nice days. I mean, I enjoyed myself, my family. We were, I think, very well treated, this and that. But I will tell you something. Those people sitting and talking and making such judgments and analogies are quite good examples of what small thinking is. The relationship between Jews and Turks has a history of 519 years, ladies and gentlemen. It's just, please do repeat it. At least 519 years. Okay? That's why I told you, don't just try to judge things through the prism of a moment of the history. Look at the entire history. 519 years. Turkish-Israeli relations, 63 years uninterrupted. Turkey stood up and made its decision and recognized Israel. No Turkish leader, including my prime minister, sitting in his office, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and others, never ever challenged Israel's existence as an independent state in an internationally recognized borders. If anyone can come up with any such statement, I would just swallow all my words. Secondly, in international relations, there is no emotions, ladies and gentlemen. There are interests. The interests of the region, the interests of the two countries, the interests of peace and stability and regional perspective requires this relationship. Big thinking requires this relationship. Why is United States trying to help? That's the reason. So I wouldn't, again, you press me hard in order to be undiplomatic, but by your questions. If we weigh the need of two parties, who needs the other most, you would understand. Just make your judgment. But still, we today proudly, again, just as we did 63 years ago, without any FMS credits, without any agreements, without any such things, we made our own decision and recognized Israel. We are not offered anything as a Muslim majority country. I'm telling you, today, Israel, even as we speak, even under the present circumstances, even present difficulties, that this strained relationship and everything, Israel cannot find any better friend than Turkey in the region. Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Looking everybody here. Everybody asking. Thank you. My name is. Let me say this. I'm Turkish American. I've been here since 1970. I've been many organizations in Turkish American relation, and my simple question is this: not Israel, not Syria, not Iraq, not Afghanistan. How about we improve Turkish-American relation?
Well, I think you're talking about the perception thing. Perceptions, when you talk about the real relationship, there cannot be any better relationship, that we could have presently. U.S.-Turkish relationship today is an excellent situation. The level of relationship politically is excellent. Economically, it's far beyond its potential, or behind its potential, far below its potential, but politically it's excellent. However, when it comes to the perceptions, that's a very good question, and I thank you for that, for asking me that question and giving me the chance to explain it. Now, the Americans are mostly are not quite interested in the foreign policy issues. No, most of them, they don't know where Turkey is. And most of them, they think that Turkey is right next door to Brazil, for instance. But what they know are some symbols. They look at the symbols. Take last year's events, that the incidents or political developments that we had in our bilateral relationship, how they transpired themselves into those perceptions. For instance, Turkey, first the Armenian issue. Armenian issue here, a local political issue. No one knows where Armenia is. They only know how important it is to give those Armenian Americans support to get elected to the Congress. That's what they know. And they are not interested in Turkey, in Armenia, in the good of their relationship or their vision. So, but this is not something pleasant. So the image is not good. The second issue is Iran. When they see our Prime Minister hand in hand with Ahmadinejad, you know, since they cannot make some sort of a pleasant, I think, conclusion out of this picture. And then an organized army fighting with some civilians on a ship in the middle of nowhere in the Mediterranean. This is not a pleasant picture. These are the front line or front page stories in the American newspapers that I'm talking to you. So this is, fourthly, then we have NATO nuclear, I'm sorry, this defense, missile defense radar thing also created a controversy. So everything they hear about those related to Turkey and U.S., because in order to make resonance in the minds of the American people, you have to have a relevance to U.S. These all have some relevance, but they do not care to go and listen and learn about the history behind those symbols. In each of those symbols, there is a history behind, a historical background. I mean, I told you about what we did about Israel. I can talk to you more about the details. You'll be amazed. I can tell you what I did personally from Washington in building and establishing a relationship, a meeting between Netanyahu and our foreign minister 10 hours before that Mavi Marmara event. No one knows about it. I can tell you many other stories. So there is a story behind it. No, that image. And then we have Iran. What we did at the end, what we did, ladies and gentlemen, about Iran is what we were asked to do. That was the thing that we did. Both International Atomic Energy Agency and the United States asked us to intervene, to take a step. We didn't do it on our own. We were asked to do it. So at the end, the people came around the table. I mean, was it bad that we managed to bring them around the table of discussion? So this is the story behind it. An Armenian thing, again, there's a long story. So this creates some sort of a negative perception among the minds of the American people. The same is true for the Turks, by the way. The same is true. Now, the most hated country on the face of the earth, when you look at the Pew polls, and you can see United States, you know, strangely. When you go to Turkey, they will just hug you, kiss you, treat you in the best possible way. You wouldn't feel it, you know. You wouldn't feel any such enmity, any such bad word when you go and visit Turkey. Why? Let me tell you why. Because when the politicians come up and say, we have to intervene for the sake of international peace and stability to Iraq, because those countries the leaders are, have bad policies, but more than that, they have weapons of mass destruction and come and be a neighbor to Turkey. Then, of course, the people ask, why are they coming here? Of course, why are they doing? They say they have some justification, some reasons for that. And after some time, it comes in a different fashion. Just the opposite. There is no weapons of mass destruction. There is no nothing. So how can you imagine any simple, ordinary Turkish citizen would come and greet the Americans there? And especially when they are to leave the country very soon, and the mess is there, unfortunately. They'll come to 10,000 kilometers to this wonderful land, but we will be there. So this is another perception problem. So what should we do then? How can we just straighten out this whole problem? It's a huge, very difficult challenge. We have to work hard in order to educate our own societies about what the system is, about what the West that's represented by United States is, what is the difference between the Wests, which is represented by Europe, and United States are, and what Turkey stands for in that region, what sort of a country Turkey is, what is Turkey doing to help the regional peace and stability in an indirect way to the global peace. And these are the things that we should do. We should work hard. We should engage with all our friends and try to explain. And we, as the professionals, we should come here more often. If you host us more, we will come more, of course. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.